Okay, I need to pull up my PowerPoint deck and then you'll see that I am going to talk through. Okay. Well, it's warming up. Let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about myself because it relates to what I'm going to talk about as my general theme. I've been here 18 years almost, and that means I've worn a lot of hats. One of the hats that I used to wear was as the faculty director of the Finance Academy that was part of the full-time MBA program. And in line with that, we would have speakers come in and talk to our students, and the students would sometimes not really respond with the questions we would expect at the end. So I always kept a question in my back pocket, and it was to the CEO or the CFO of a major company, what keeps you up at night? And they would come up with an answer, and there would be a discussion, and that was great. And I was always waiting for them to come back at me with, what keeps you up at night? Well, this is what keeps me up at night. I, about 10, 12 years ago, started to worry about the fact that we might not be in a sustainable business if we don't adjust. The Academy has for a very long time been very much about the unidirectional faculty delivering information to students and students delivering tuition to faculty. And I thought, well, maybe that's not going to be around forever, particularly when evidence started to arrive on my desktop that looked a lot like this. The landscape of higher education was really changing. On the left, there's a nice link to a Wall Street Journal piece where President Hennessy of Stanford is talking with the founder of the Khan Academy about the changing economics of education. And then you had all of these popping up, Udemy, edX, Coursera, and the thing that actually got me started thinking about all of my current work was the fact that I saw all these free slides being made available by famous Ivy League faculty in my space. So we're talking about Robert Schiller of Yale, Aswath Damodaran of NYU, various at Harvard. I thought, well, if students are able to get this kind of content for free, maybe the students and certainly the parents are going to start thinking about, well, how much do we want to spend on sending our child to college? What are our responses? Well, we could do nothing. We could say, many of us in the room might have tenure. Personally, I don't think that's the long-run equilibrium view. Or we could say, you know what, the value of the campus-based education is the accreditation. I firmly believe that accreditation is on the horizon for a lot of these online offerings. And so I don't think that argument's going to work very well either. Or we could respond. And that's what I have chosen to do. The bottom line of my response has been make the faculty member in the physical classroom a scarce and valuable resource. So how do you do that? Well, I went back to what President Hennessy of Stanford said. He particularly noted that the flipped classroom resonated with him. It was a way of flipping the responsibilities of the students. That's what we have at the bottom. And the way it worked is like this. All lecturing is done in a recording. So it's PowerPoints, it's a voiceover, you can have a camera on you if you wish, I don't wish. And you can capture whatever's on the screen, so internet searches, spreadsheet building, etc., and you make the students listen to that before they come in the classroom. That opens the door to spending classroom time on what students have told me is much harder. They don't like sitting at home, struggling with complex problems, not really learning about the real world anyway, just doing these homework problems that are contrived. And then when they hit a brick wall and the faculty member is not there to hold their hand and guide them along, they just give up or they forget what their question was. So I wanted to fix that. I wanted the classroom to be the place where the hard work was done and I could hold their hand. Now, what are the pieces necessary to flip? And then we'll start getting into how Canvas enables all of this. I use Camtasia. I can record whatever's on the screen and my voiceover, but that's not the only package out there. We have Panopto. There are also other packages out there. And in fact, there's a large lecture course being taught in our business college by John Solo in economics that also flips. And he just borrows recordings off of the web, like YouTube. So you can get these recordings, even if you don't want to make them yourself, because it's a big investment. I happen to be on a project right now where I'm trying to make available my own recordings. Check back in 2018. The bigger part that I view as valuable associated with the flip approach is what I call these real-world in-class activities. Yes, some of the problems are going to look like homework problems and guide the students towards preparation for exams. But I think the other kinds of activities that we do in the classroom are the really cool ones. Because I'm in finance and the business world, there's lots of data out there. I can have students pick one company, follow it throughout the semester, and then gather information, put it together, interpret it, and reach conclusions about whether this company is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So they follow a company throughout the semester, and that means that they know a lot about a company when they're out there talking to and interviewing with employers. Employers tell me, this is fabulous. This is what we want your students to be able to do. And we particularly like the fact that they're out there collecting messy data and having to figure out what's usable, what's not. And the faculty member is there to guide them. Now, still not on the Canvas stuff, but we're close. There are other benefits to recordings. You know, you can rewind, pause, listen again. It delivers the learning in a more audio fashion. It's much better than reading in my view, because I remember what it was like to read my first calculus textbook. And there was no emphasis, no highlighting, unless I bought a used copy and somebody highlighted for me beforehand. A recording allows the faculty member to go ahead and do this emphasizing and repetition, to tell the student, hey, pay attention here, or you can use those exact words. Different students learn in different ways as well. So this is another way of learning. Auditory might work better with a recording because maybe it's a 10-minute recording. I try to limit my recordings to no more than 12 minutes, instead of sitting in a classroom for an hour and 15 minutes checking your phone or snoozing. So these are all benefits that I think are worth paying attention to. It's also really good for delivery of material in condensed windows, and I've done a fair amount of that. What are the real benefits of these in-class activities? Well, it's the experiential learning. We've heard that phrase a lot these days. This is what gets enabled by having all that time in the classroom and all the help made available by the faculty member. It's another form of learning, or another layer of the onion, if you will, and it provides the contextual reinforcement of this theoretical stuff that we often talk about in recordings. All right, last thing. It's not unidirectional anymore, because the students are going to work in small groups and the faculty member moves around and talks with the groups. So they're more likely to ask questions of you, and they're especially more likely to ask questions of their peers. And I'll give you some examples in a minute. All right, so why is Canvas important? Well, it's important for the following reason. I teach this course to 400 students. It's actually in 2 sections. But with 400 students, it's really important that I have a system. Ooh, I've got to shut that off. Okay. It's really important that I have a system to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. They cannot participate effectively in the learning process in the classroom where they're doing all this experiential stuff. That didn't take. Is this going to go? There we go. Never. They can't participate in the classroom effectively if they haven't listened to the material in advance. They're busy students. They really need their hands held. They're undergraduates. And finance is hard. Here's how I hold their hand. When they log in, they are presented with this screen. This is a calendar. By date, here's what you need to do. These are short recordings, and they have to take the class meeting. They have to take the quiz before class meeting 2. So the first day, I tell them this is what Flip is about, and actually I hold their hands further by sending an email before classes even begin. But then they have this nice calendar. You can see that every single class meeting has something going on. And there are different color codings to indicate what's due now versus what's past and what's coming up. Right now, we're at this point, we just finished this day. Turns out that they got their last recordings on Wednesday night, and took their last quiz on Wednesday night, and Thursday was the start of the big case day. And so you don't get to see what the different colors look like for their future material. But this was really important. So let's go back and talk about holding their hand. You gotta herd these 400 cats. You gotta present them with a way of paying attention to what's coming up. And then you gotta hold their feet to the fire. This was a really hard thing for me. Faculty always say, well, they're not gonna listen to the recordings because they don't read. Okay, well, how do we fix that? When I taught the execs, I would just have them do a quick quiz in class on paper. But with 400 students, that's impossible. So I have them take a quiz online. And I love the capabilities of Canvas for these quizzes. So we come back here and I can show you the quizzes. Let's go ahead and I'll show you my version so you get a sense of the true, come on, the true benefit. So I can pull up quiz before class meeting 8. And I can preview it. And what happens here is, in fact, I should probably just edit it. Keep editing this quiz. Yeah, what happens here is you can ask that you get students to be really precise. See what I've got here for my questions? I have an answer, but a margin of error. And what that means is I can enforce on them the importance of actually being precise. Because in finance, when you're dealing with portfolios of billions of dollars, small errors can put a big hole in that portfolio. I want them practicing the precision that is necessary to succeed in finance. So there are all these quizzes. And the nice thing is I can also set it up in Canvas so that they can take the quiz as many times as they like before I shut it down at 4 a.m. of the class day. And so that's an easy A. And they recognize it's an easy A and an important A because it's a chunk of their grade. And so they just keep working at it in order to get that 100%. Well, that's part of the learning process too. You get it wrong, you got to think about it and go back and you fix it. So I love the quizzes. I think they're fabulous. I forgot to mention one of the great things about the recordings and Canvas's implementation of them. I can stuff all the recordings up on ShareStream, and that's a great server. You know, you get a nice big server. Canvas allows the functionality to pull these recordings off of ShareStream. 400 students downloading at once, never a problem. Okay, so Canvas can link with these big streaming servers. That's really powerful. And it also means that I don't have to come up with 400 DVDs and then my recordings are out there floating around. You cannot download and save off of the server. You can just stream. And what I'm hoping for, I'll say this as a wish list item, is that at some point in the near future, I will be able to see for each individual student how much time they spent watching any individual recording. Because some recordings are more important than others. And I want to be able to say, hey, look, I ran a regression of time spent on this recording and performance on this question on the exam. And oh, look at that really positive correlation. You would be wise, students of mine, to spend more time on this recording. So, holding their feet to the fire through quizzes. The other thing that's really important is holding their feet to the fire on participation in the classroom. So, a big chunk of their grade is also on completion of the in-class activities, because one is due every single class meeting, and how they interacted with their peers. Were they contributing? Well, what that means is peer evaluations. Right now, I'm getting ready to receive the second round of peer evaluations. I'll have 400 pieces of paper slid under my door, and then I have to excel it to death. So what I'm hoping, the other wish list item, is that Canvas will get to a point where, as you log in as a student, you can say peer evaluation button, your 4 or 5 group peer names appear on the screen, and a 1 to 10 for each of them. Put in a radio button for your peers, and then Canvas will do the calculation itself of what was a student's average peer evaluation made by the others. Anyway, I do that all on my own right now. The hidden benefits that don't get talked about a lot, but I think are the elephant in the room, is the diversity of thought that goes on in the groups. The Tippy College of Business has a humongous proportion of native Chinese speaking students. They're coming straight from China. And I noticed in the hallways and in the classrooms, they talk to their friends. They are not talking to others within the college. I didn't like that at all. I think that there's real value to the diversity of thought, cross-pollination of ideas and cultures. So I enforce diversity in the groups. I tell them first, I form the groups. Second, no group divorces. Because that's the way it works in the real world anyway. You don't get to choose your colleagues generally. And Canvas allows me to do this. Canvas allows you to randomly form groups. So when I was doing people, I can do group set. I can come up with a name. And then what I can do is group structure. I can split students into X number of equal groups. That's the randomization that I love. So Canvas is fabulous as far as I'm concerned. And I switched to it as an early adopter because I knew I was going to be teaching this class. And I thought it's much easier to do the things that I want to do through Canvas than it is through D2L. All right. So back to the beginning. I think the landscape is changing. I think 2, maybe 3 generations from now, there will be accreditation of online. There will be much cheaper education available in a strictly online framework. If we want to continue to charge tuition at the level that we are right now, we need to make faculty a scarce and valuable resource in the physical classroom. I think flipping is the way to do it. But I drank every drop of that Kool-Aid, and I don't know how many others there are like me. But if you're going to do this sort of stuff, and I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants guidance and help going through the process, Canvas is really the way to implement it. Okay, so I've probably run over time, but I'll take any and all questions. Thank you for your attention. Maggie. Probably not. Yeah, so Maggie showed me the list when we were talking about joining, and it's a who's who. I mean, these are the major state institutions of higher learning. And I thought, you know, it's kind of important that we belong to our set of peers within the Big Ten, particularly, many of whom, yeah, I'm staring at Indiana here. My best friend works at Indiana. And you know, they're leaders within the education profession, particularly in business, which is my focus for the moment. So I thought it was important that we be an early mover as well. And being able to get in at the time that Maggie was talking about it gave us not a unique seat at the table, but a loud voice seat at the table. One of the, what do you call us, founding members? Yeah. So we get to talk about, hey, this is what we think. Maybe we ought to consider implementing it within Canvas or within the consortium. The other thing that I really liked was the focus of Unison on the data analytics associated with learning. That's one of the reasons why I'm really interested in this data on the individual recording time that students spend watching. Because I think that will help convince students of the link between it's really important to actually do what we tell you to do and your learning outcomes. And then we'll be able to collect all of this information, not just for us, but for anybody taking, say, the basic finance course. And now we'll be able to say, oh, look, this is the sort of thing that really generates better learning outcomes at other institutions. We ought to consider putting it into our curriculum. What else?
How long did it take to have the students adopt to the flipped format? And did you encounter any challenges or resistance?
Yeah, so this is going to sound incredibly self-serving, but I didn't have much trouble. And it's because I have a firm belief, which was brought to me by my best friend at Indiana. He said, students do best when they know what the expectations are. So I am the expectations guy. I have a 2-page email that I send out to the students 2 or 3 days before classes begin, saying, here's what's coming. You're not used to it. I promise you I won't let you drown. I promise you your learning outcomes will be better. I promise you that it won't be as scary prepping for exams, but here's your job. And I attach the syllabus, and then I send out, I would say, 20 emails during the course of the semester. So, not quite after every class meeting, but pretty close, telling them, good job. Here's what I saw going well. Here's what to get ready for. That expectation setting made all the difference. Students got on board really quickly. The other trick I used was the first day they meet their groups, they sit down at a locked place. I put table numbers on stands all around the room, and they know their group assignment numbers in advance. They come in, they meet their group, they decide on the one company they're going to follow throughout the semester, and then they get to leave early. And then on the Thursday, the second day of class, they have an easy first assignment with the company that they're following. And they get to leave early. And suddenly they get the sense of, we can do this. And they talk, and you can see now at the end of the semester, we're knee deep in the tough case. It's a 4-day case. And they're way ahead of the game. They're chattering away, they're debating stuff, they put their hand up, they ask for help. Which is something that I haven't really talked about. Somebody might ask, but I can't cover 250 in the room by myself. But I have strategies for recruiting TAs. So if anybody wants to know about that, let me know. Kevin.
So if you think about, different people think about students differently.
Yeah.
I've heard the 10-80-10 principle, or the 34-30, or however you want to divide them up.
Yeah.
Which is there a strata of these that it helps the most, that flipping helps the most, or the?
Yeah, again, this is going to sound really bad, least self-serving, but I think that the flip approach really lends itself to what I call layers of the onion. So the recordings and the quizzes are the table stakes. The students have to listen to the recordings and they have to perform well on the quizzes because that's easy money. And then when they get to the exams, they invariably get a handful of simple, time value of money, net present value, the real basic stuff, questions correct. So I know that I got everybody when that didn't necessarily used to be the case in a standard large lecture. But then if you want to learn more, if you're the middle group, then you're doing the in-class activity leading. So you're within your group, the implicit leader. And I pick those out during the semester. I can see who they are because I walk around the room. Those are the ones that I talk to after class and I say, you'd make a really good TA. And their face just lights up. And so the next year, they're one of my TAs. So I have 20 this year from the undergrads last year. And I'll have the same next year. But then the third layer, the real deep learners, my in-class activities have layers as well. I've got optional questions at the end, and I tell them, this is hard. This is stuff that the more advanced students are doing, not in the basic class, but in the really advanced classes. And so you can build it so that flipping allows you to handle the distribution in what I view as a very effective way. 10 seconds. 10 minutes left. Thank you. Jim's got a question as well. Sorry. And Burn, too. He wants it recorded.
John, can you talk about the environment that you're doing this in, and has Canvas helped you in any way in that environment?
Yes, thank you. So I teach this giant undergraduate class in a cavernous auditorium. All seats face forward. So you would think, well, how is this going to work when it's not a tile or a round table sort of framework? It works fine. And the one innovation that I didn't do the first time, but I did the second time, was I capped the class at 250 students per meeting. So with 250 students in a 400-seat room, there are enough gaps. And they can spin around and talk to a couple behind them, so they don't have to do 5 across. They can do 3 and 2. And it opens up aisle access a lot more. So my TAs can get in and actually lean over and look at the spreadsheet they're building. It's eminently doable. You know, tile classrooms are great. They're fancy. They're also expensive. I think we can do this in a regular classroom without any difficulty. And if you look at our 70-seat lecture rooms, I used to teach in those rooms, and now Shagun Pant in our department teaches the required corporate finance class for finance majors. She's got 70 in the room, chock-a-block full. She flips. It's doable. Vern?
Tell me more about the TA situation.
Yeah. Okay, and then Jim, remind me that I didn't answer your question about Canvas. Yeah, so the TAs, one, the reward is they feel loved. You know, I talked to them and I said, you'd be really good at this. So I actually make a point of trying to emphasize diversity, especially gender diversity and racial diversity in my recruiting. I think that's crucial because both are underrepresented within the finance profession. Another reward is if you come to both of my sections each class day, you get 3 hours of directed readings credit. If you only do one section out of the 2, you get 2 hours of directed readings credit. Obviously, 1 hour is due to the fact that you're checking the answers to the in-class activities that I have sent them in advance, walking through it on your own, practicing in front of the mirror, getting ready to guide the students, but not answer the full question. And so they're learning how to teach as well. And every single one of the students that comes back from an interview with, say, a bulge bracket investment bank or a big company, they say, they asked me what this TA job was about, and I told them, and they said, that's amazing. We love you're doing that. So I can't argue with that. The Canvas question about how a cavernous classroom is enabled by Canvas. Let's think about this. I think, you know, the quizzes being online the way they are helps make sure that a cavernous classroom is all marching in the same direction. They've all done it. The recordings being on ShareStream allow that as well. I'd have to think about other ways that Canvas is helpful on that. I'm sure there are, but I'm just not seeing it right now.
Well, are they using a group discussion within
I hate to admit this, but I don't know. So I have a limited amount of RAM, and I've just never checked it. So it's quite possible. And now that you say it, it occurs to me that it's most likely to be happening right now. Because on this big case, it's a 4-class period case. You know, they're getting ready to go on break. Most of them put the giant Excel spreadsheet that they're building, their model building, up on a cloud. And so they're all accessing it. They probably want to have those group discussions while they're on vacation if they want to get ahead on it. Now, they don't need to do work over the vacation to finish it, but some of them are really go-getters.
This is my question that goes beyond probably your presentation, but
it's okay.
My sense is that our students use capabilities outside of Canvas. They all use Google Docs. Or they use
Oh, yeah.
Help, which I think are available here, and I don't know whether we care. It's sort of like it's there, we're paying for it, but it feels like they do stuff outside. They talk on Facebook, they use Google Docs, and I just wonder if we should be making an effort to encourage or bring them in so that we have some language.
So I can answer that, and that was actually going to be my next question to John, so perfect segue, thank you. We are getting ready to, in the next few months, integrate Office 365 into Canvas. So my question to John was, how much easier would that make your classwork in Canvas if Office 365 was to be integrated directly in your course?
I think it would make it, thank you, a lot easier, particularly on this activity, this 4-day activity they're involved in right now. I have noticed that Excel spreadsheet building has low functionality if you have an Apple and you have downloaded the free online version of Excel. So if this Office 365 can be made available to them so that they can do cell referencing across tabs, they can pull in the regression functionality without any difficulty, because I do have to run regressions to estimate betas in my course. These are really useful tools, so thank you.
So I'd like to add one more thing to that question about Do we bring them into the fold, or do we just let them use tools elsewhere? As the day goes on, we're going to talk a lot about learning analytics and about how Unison has helped us to get at data that is really our data and really our students' data. And when we have that data in the ecosystem, now the researchers and the Office of Teaching, Learning, and Technology can start looking at forecast models that help students understand the path of their learning.
Mm-hmm.
You can start talking about personalized learning and all sorts of things with dashboards for the students. So we're caught between allowing people to innovate, because we do want them to innovate and use tools like these, but also keeping them in the ecosystem so that we can capture that data. And it's kind of it's a fine line and a tricky walk, but hopefully we can add value so that people are there by choice, not because we force them into that ecosystem. So
yeah.
Is that the...
I think we have time for one more question.
Maybe one more. Otherwise, I'll be around all day. I'm happy to chat offline. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jon.